Hi, and welcome to the Virgin River Cafe Rewatch podcast. Good afternoon, Gigi.
Good afternoon, Tracy. How are you today?
Good. We're starting a little late today. Later than our normal. Usually
It's
we do this
okay.
in the morning, but
At least we're here.
we are. It's a beautiful day. We've survived the rain. The sun has come
Mm,
out. There's still a nip in the air, so it's kind of
yeah.
nice.
Yes. I thought I needed a boat there for a minute, but I
I
think
thought
I'm
you
good.
might have too. I thought we did too, but I think we're okay. I think we're going to make it. I think it's going to be just fine. So what is your caffeinated beverage today?
Today, it's been a tough week, so I just decided that I was going straight for the hard stuff, which is
The hard stuff.
an ex- for me the hard stuff is, 2 shots of espresso. Nothing in it.
Oh, I was feeling that because I went with 3 shots. But I did. Yeah, it's been that kind of week. Um, and I might have to have 3 more. I'm not really sure yet. 3 shots with my cream and ice and flavor, and
So I know
that's
your drinks are ready to go to a ball. Mine's is
yeah.
just hanging out on the street corner.
Nope, it's all
Uh,
good. It's all good. Mine. I'm a bougie coffee
that's all
drinker.
right.
I
I
like all
do,
the
I do,
special
but
and.
I know, but I do bougie with other stuff. My
Right.
drink, nah,
Not so
not so
much.
much.
Not so much. That's okay.
No,
That's all right. So we are knee deep in season 4.
I know.
Are you ready to get started?
Ready to
All right. All
rumble.
right. Let's go.
This is season 4, episode 4. Serious as a dot 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 dot.
I love the dot, dot, dot. I know. I'm so weird. But every time I write text messages and stuff, I'm a dot, dot, dot girl. And I think it's a mom thing. It's like my kids always give me crap about it. They're like, if I put a period at the end of my text, they're like, why are you mad? Like, that's rude. Like, what? Don't use caps. Don't use periods. Like, it's apparently those things are signs of aggression. And, but dot, dot, dot is like, are you going to say something else? I'm like, instead of using a period, I pause. It's my pause because it's like we're having a conversation. And so my dot, dot, dot is a pause. I just love the fact that Virgin River titles usually use a lot of dot dot dot, so it's close to my heart.
You are too funny.
I know. I'm a little quirky, but that's okay. It's part of my charm.
Yep, it is.
So, this episode, the description says Hope's concussive symptoms continue, frustrating both her and Doc. Meanwhile, Mel asks Preacher to help her surprise a stubborn Jack. All right, here we go. So it's morning. We are starting with a beautiful sunrise over Virgin River. And Mel is sound asleep in her bed in a beautiful little maroon nightie, which is just so pretty. Usually she's in like a t-shirt or something random. And I love her sheets. They're like floral. And usually everybody on TV shows have like white sheets, like it's a hotel.
Solid.
But
Yeah,
she
solid.
always has floral sheets. I think that's so fun. It just kind of shows her personality. It's cute. So she's waking up and looking, and Jack is not there. So she gets up, she's looking around and like wondering, but she sees a note on the bedside table, and it says, "Yesterday was tough. There's a surprise waiting for you outside," with a signed J. And remember yesterday when we left our friends in Virgin River? That was when she had the lady with the twins and the stillbirth, and the dad came and that whole thing, and he had it every day. Everybody had a tough day, so
Yes, they did.
he is just so sweet. So of course she's very curious. She's like, "Oh, how sweet, my man." She gets up and she's gonna go investigate. And it's a great song. It's a great song in the background. So she puts her robe on and she goes outside, and he set up a little table. Like, he couldn't just leave it outside. Like, he has to like present. Like, I swear, like I said before, this guy really hasn't had a woman in his life for like a long time. Like, someone he really cares about, really wants to like do things for. And so he's been saving this up for her. So like all these little romantic gestures, it's like, he hasn't been thinking about it. Like, where will I ever get to use this, or you do these things? So Mel is the recipient of all of it. Lucky girl.
Well, I always say it's just like food.
Yeah.
We eat with our eyes.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about patience. If it doesn't look good, not gonna happen.
But you know what? It's like you wouldn't expect him to take the time to care as much, to do the presentation or to think of the little, and it's like the little things, you know, the little notes that he leaves and, you know, the little gestures. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
it's, you wouldn't expect it from him. But it's like, I think, you know, he's always been a romantic at heart and he just never had the opportunity for anyone to see that side of him. And
Yeah.
obviously she's the only one that ever sees this because obviously Preacher doesn't know that he's like this, or his sister, or, you know, Hope or Doc. I mean, they don't know that he's like this unless somebody says, "Oh, Jack did the sweetest thing for me this morning." Like nobody would know that.
Right.
So
That's
she
true.
comes outside and there's this little white table with a vase of flowers and a little basket and a coffee. Like the man would have my heart right there. That's it. That's all you would do. So she looks in the
Oh,
basket and he always wraps it in like a napkin or a linen or something. And she
well, you
opens
never
up.
know the wild animals that may come and eat it.
Well, yeah, especially when he did the muffins before. Like I was waiting for raccoons to come and snack on her breakfast, but fortunately it didn't happen. So she's moving the linen and she looks inside of it and just the look on her face is like that's what she's thinking. Like you could tell it's something that moved her, which is
Yes.
we'll just have to wait and see. So now we get a nice scene of the Virgin River and some beautiful mood music in the background, which is always nice.
Mm-hmm.
Always pleasant. And we're at Jack's bar. And it looks like it's morning. And Jack, oh my goodness. Now, if you didn't think his dad had any effect on him, you'd be wrong. You'd be wrong. Because his dad makes one comment and Jack is in like fix it mode. Like his dad made one comment that, oh, it looks a little dingy outside. And, you know, he's always trying to get he wants his dad to be proud of him. He wants his dad to pay attention to him. And his dad just isn't that
Yeah.
guy. Just not that guy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
considering, well, the dad had never been to Jack's bar. It's like, really? He even said,
That's
I've
true.
been here for 7 years and you've never checked in. Like, because you know he's had to have been to town. How could he have not been to the bar? But whatever. So Jack is looks like he's got this outdoor project going on. Preacher comes outside and he's talking to him. He goes, I thought you were just power washing because, you know, the dad said it looked a little dingy. And Jack's like, yeah, I was. But then the water pressure stripped off way more than dirt. And yeah. So now he's decided that the place needs a whole new paint job. So he's got tarps and paint and tools and Preacher's like, oh my God. And he's like, so everything end up okay with your dad? And he was like, yeah, you know. And he's like, well, what about Charmaine? And he's like, yep, it's all good. Like he's just trudging along. And he goes, Brady? It's like, what is with all the questions? He goes, you seem a little intense this morning. Like, you know, Preacher's just chilling. And Jack looks like he's had way too much caffeine.
Exactly. He knows something's up. So
Oh, well,
that's why 20 questions is happening.
Well, and you figure his dad just put more pressure on him. Like he didn't already have enough with Brady, with Charmaine, you know, with everything else. And then his dad has to come and make a comment. You know, it's like, really? Really? And so Preacher tells him, no, I'm just focused. It's like,
well, we know his dad isn't, you know what.
The dude's spinning out of control. And Preacher's his friend. He's like, listen, man, I'm not trying to give you a hard time or anything. And Jack's like, ugh. He goes, you've been really supportive with me, the whole thing with Paige and Christopher. And he's like, you know, you don't have to hold it all in. And Jack's like, oh, I'm not. And he goes, Preacher's telling him, there's no judgment. You know, because Preacher has found outlets. He goes to therapy. He goes to a veterans group. Now he does Aikido. Like, he's dealing with his situation, and he doesn't even have as much to deal with as Jack does. In comparison, I mean, granted, you know, having the kid that your sort of girlfriend, friend, roommate's son get kidnapped by his uncle, who's
crazy ass.
Right. Like, that's a crazy thing to deal with. But that's his only thing. Where Jack's got like 5 things happening in his life, and he's not handling it very well. But, you know, Preacher's trying to help. He's trying, but Jack is very like, I'm good. You can go back inside. And Preacher's just like, dude, is there anything else I can do? And he goes, yeah, a burger and a cold beer at lunch would be awesome. So he's like, all right. So Jack's just going to get to work. And he's the kind of guy, if there's a problem I can physically fix, I'm going to fix it, because there's a lot of emotional stuff he can't fix, but a physical thing, it gives him something to do. It's like he needs to channel that energy, and so he's going to channel it into painting the outside of the bar. Like, whatever.
Hey, whatever gets you through the day, as I say.
I know. So now we're back at the clinic, and Mel gets there, and she's like, "Oh, is coffee fresh? Great." And Cameron's there making coffee, and then she says to Cameron that Doc has gotten much better at making coffee, because usually that's her job. Because, remember in the beginning, Doc just sort of saw Mel as like his secretary, his receptionist, and the person who makes the coffee. He sees her differently now, but I think it kind of got into the mode where she would just make the coffee. It was just easier than to argue with him.
Also, probably she made a better cup of coffee, too.
I'm sure. So Cameron's like, can I get you a cup? And how do you take it? Mr. Helpful. And she's like, you know what? I'm actually trying to cut back, but thanks. It smells delicious. Now, she's cutting back because girlfriend got a bun in the oven. But she doesn't want to tell anybody because it's very early.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's like, I wanted to say thanks for last night, their barbecue. And he's like, I had a lot of fun. I hope I didn't overstay my welcome. Like, he's trying to be very jovial. And she's like, no, not at all. We had a great time. He's like, oh, I gotta hand it to Jack. He put up with a lot of shop talk. And she's like, oh, he said he had fun. And Cameron asks, I know. Cameron asks if she had ever heard back about the guy who had passed out at the grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, yeah, I did. The hospital called and he had passed away, as she's fixing herself a cup of tea. And he's like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And she's like, I'm surprised that they called you. And she's like, yeah, well, what happened was the paramedics gave the hospital her name and number, and they just assumed that she was his daughter. So that's why they called her. And I guess the hospital was in the process of trying to locate some kind of family. And if they can't find anybody, and Cameron's like, yeah, then it's an unmarked grave. And she's like, and then poor Jack, she goes, I kind of ended up spinning out on him, and it was a long night because she had a really long day. She goes, sorry, is this an overshare? Am I oversharing? Now, Cameron, he's kind of sweet on Mel. So any interaction with her is fine by him. So he's like, no, not at all. You're just being human. She's like, yeah, okay. Like, a little awkward, but okay. So now we are at Brady's, and his motorcycle's parked outside, and Bree is there pouring herself a cup of coffee, and he's like, hey, Bree, can you grab me a few bandages? Because remember when we saw our friends in Virgin River, the two of them were
doing the limbo
together on the couch.
Yes.
And she stopped for a second to look at his injury and was like, are you okay? And he was like, I'm fine. That's not going to stop me.
Mom.
Right.
Yeah.
So here we are the next morning for them. And he's like, I think I left some bandages out there. So she's looking for bandages. And she doesn't know his place. She's never, I'm sorry. Why would you look under the sink? Like, if I'm looking for bandages, I would look in the cabinets. I would look on the counter. Under the sink is where you keep your chemicals and your dishwashing detergent. It just makes no sense that you would look. But for storyline purposes, she looks under the sink and she sees this bag. Odd. She turns around to look in his direction, pulls this bag out and opens it. Like, should I be doing this? Very apprehensive, and looks inside, and what is full of? Clothes. And she digs a little deeper, and more clothes, and stacks of money. Like a lot of money. Like a lot of stacks of money. And he walks in seeing her with her hands in this bag. And she's like, oh my gosh. And he's like, what the hell? And she looks at him and she's like he doesn't know what to say. He grabs the bag and he's like, you don't get it. It's not so clear cut. I can't go back to jail. And so now they start a little squabble. And she's like, so you're just gonna leave? He goes, no, I don't know. I haven't decided. And she's like, okay, so you're just gonna become a fugitive instead? He's like, Bree, I'm innocent. You know this. She goes, yeah, I do. I also know that running is going to make you look really guilty. He's like, but I can't stay here. And he's like, Calvin, the guy I used to work for, he wants something from me that I won't give him. She's like, okay, yeah, I know who Calvin is. And he's like, how? She has to tell him because remember, she never told him that Calvin confronted her outside the hospital.
That's right.
So she's finally, I mean, it's not like she wanted to tell him, but it was going to, everything always comes out eventually, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's like, after I left the hospital, he threatened me in the parking lot. Okay, that probably wasn't
the best thing
the
for her
best
to say to him.
word to use because if it were anybody else, they would just deal with. But Brady is going to lose his shit over this.
Exactly.
For sure.
You're messing with the woman I love now.
Right?
Now you're backing up Schitt's Creek now.
And he's like, what do you mean he threatened you? And she said, he said, as long as you go back to work, for him, nothing bad would happen to me. And Brady's like, oh, no. I swear to God, I'm going to kill him. And she's like, no. She goes, going after Calvin is only going to make things worse. He's like, I don't care. He needs to know that he even looks at you, he's dead. Now, you knew. He's a hothead. He's a loose cannon.
Exactly.
He's going to go tearing off. But Bree's smart.
Yes.
Bree is smart and she's calculated.
Yeah. Right. But this is the difference in being someone who's educated and understands the concept of the law compared to someone who has spent their entire life being
basically scratching.
Right. He has to defend himself for everything in his life.
Exactly.
And so the minute you threaten what is his, there is no thinking here. There's action and reaction.
Yep, that's it.
The fact that he is just threatening the woman he
that's
loved.
It. Yeah, he's done.
He's done. He's there's no talking here. There's no compromising. There's no reasoning. We're going all the way down, people.
So she's telling him, Brady, stop. She goes, look, that is not how we're going to win. And she's holding his hand. She's like, we're going to set up a trap. And he's like, what do you mean a trap? She goes, first, you need to tell me everything you know about Emerald Lumber. Like, she needs the information so she can formulate a plan.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, okay. And he holds her really close, her hands. And, she's like, I'm sick of being cooped up. I need to figure this out. He goes, let's go for a ride first. And so she's still in it. I mean,
yeah,
goodness. So Mel is showing up at the bar. And she's coming the back way, and she runs into Preacher. And she's like, hey, is Jack around? He was like, oh, yeah, he's out front. And she's like, great. I want to take him somewhere special this afternoon. Do you have any ideas? And he's like, okay, well, what's the occasion? She goes, well, I just want to give him a break. I want it to be a surprise. She's okay, well, there's fishing at Whisper Creek, and it's a beautiful, secluded island. You two could spend the night. And she's like, oh, that sounds perfect. He goes, okay, can you cover the bar? He's like, absolutely. He goes, but the island is kind of remote. My buddy Ruben owns a fishing boat. It's docked at the marina. Maybe he can run you guys over there. She's like, perfect. How much will it be? He goes, nope, you know what? Don't worry about it. It's on me. She's like, are you sure? And in the middle of all that, he's texting the guy. And the guy texts back, and he's like, he can do it. You just got to be there at 4:00. And she's like, okay, perfect. He goes, that means you need to leave by 2, because remember, it's 2 hours away. She's like, 2? No problem. He goes, oh, thanks for the hookup. He goes, no. Don't thank me yet, because you still need to find a way to pry Jack away from painting. He goes, that is a man who finishes what he starts. She's like, challenge accepted. So he's like, good luck. So she's like got this sly look on her face like, I'm gonna persuade him. So he's painting, and she kind of leans outside, and she's like, hey. And he's like, you missed the spot. He's like, oh, yeah, you're funny. Because he's just working away with, like, no thought in mind. And he's like, hey. So she's like, thank you for this. The engraving is beautiful. So it was a necklace that he gave her. And he's like, it's not too over the top. And she's like, what? Our initials together? No, it's so sweet. I love it. She's like, when did you find time to do this? And he's like, well, I bought it a while back. Just kind of kept it for a rainy day, and I figured last night qualified. And it's so cute how he always, like, when they get close, he'll, like, play with her hair, put his hand on her shoulder. They're very cute together. And she's like, I'm so sorry, She goes, I got emotional and with everything going on. And he's like, no, it's fine. He's like, it's okay. I get it. And she's like, I just can't stop thinking about the stillborn. Now, remember, she's trying to stay positive for this pregnancy. She's trying not to let anything get her down. That's why she's trying to keep herself busy and stuff like that. And he was like, oh, babe. And he put their foreheads together. And she's like, I was doing so good, trying to stay positive and can't help what happens. She's like, I just don't want that to happen to us. And he's like, it's not. And she's like, okay. Like she's trying to will herself out of feeling freaked out. And he's like, that is why you got to tell me sooner, because I want to be there for you. Because I think with everything with Mark, although he was her husband and they dealt with stillborn, and I don't know that he was as there for her as she wanted him to be. Like he was like, we're going to get over it. We're going to get through it, instead of just like living in it for a minute.
Well, that's the way he dealt with it, unfortunately.
Right.
So.
It was very different than Jack. Jack's like all in, like, what do you need? Where I think Mark was more like, this is just what we have to do.
Right.
And I think Jack is just more emotionally connected. And so he's more worried about how she's dealing with it, not even thinking about himself.
Right.
So, but he's like, I want to be there for you. And she's like, I know, but you were having a bad day. And he's like, no, I told you, if anything ever upsets you, I want to know about it. He's trying to tell her that you're not by yourself in this world anymore, because she's pretty much felt like with everybody in her life, basically, she cared about who's died. She's been by herself, dealing with everything by herself. And he's trying to implore to her, you're not alone. You don't have to be alone anymore. You don't have to deal with stuff alone. And it's hard to, like, when you've done that for so long, to have to change that.
And even with her sister there, it's still certain.
But it's, and it's different because her sister, her sister's there for her 100%. But her sister's got her own problems, her own family, her own life. And and it's just the two of them.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just don't want to bring all that to the sister because she's got her own stuff to deal with. Whereas Jack is just there for her. And that's just not something she's used to. And so she's like, okay, I know. I'll try. I'll do better. I will. I'll tell you things. Because she just, this is new for her. So the cute smoochy smooch. So he's like, so what are you doing today besides kissing me? And she's like, well, I was going to ask you to drive me to the BMW dealership because my car is making this like weird sound. And he's like, well, did you talk to Bert? We love Bert. We haven't seen Bert in a while. Hopefully we'll see him soon.
Love Bert.
I know, we love Bert. And she's like, yeah, but he said he doesn't have the tools to fix a German car or something. So he's like, well, I'm kind of in the middle of something. Can it wait till tomorrow? She goes, yeah, well, it's just that today at 4 was the only appointment that they had. And otherwise I have to wait like 2 weeks. And he's like, okay, it's going to be tight, but I'll make it work. So she's like, thank you. And so he's like, maybe you could just like, their arms around each other. They're just kind of standing there holding each other. And he's like, well, maybe we can just like stay here like this for like the rest of the day. She's like, yeah, really? Kissy. And she's like, I have to go to work though. And he's like, oh no, work ruins everything. And she's like, doesn't it? He's like, yeah. I mean, they just keep kissing. It's cute. He's like, okay, well, I guess I gotta go. So off she goes. And he's like, see you in a few hours. So he's gonna have to hustle with this painting project that he's decided to start. So we're inside the bar, and Lizzie is clearing some tables. And in comes Ricky, and she's like, I thought you had the day off. He goes, yeah, I'm just picking up my check. And then Denny walks in, and she's like, hi. And then she introduces them, Denny, Ricky, Ricky, Denny. He goes, oh, yeah, I've seen you around. And he goes, oh, your 2 slices of peanut butter banana bread and some flaxseed granola are ready. Because I guess he placed an order. And Ricky, of course, has to make a comment. He's like, yeah, that sounds like lunch for a squirrel. And Denny's like, not a flaxseed fan? And Ricky's like, no, like seeds are for birds. And so he's like, so are you going somewhere? Because Lizzie, obviously she packed him a lunch for something. And he's like, yeah, Stockman's Point. And she's like, what's that? And then Ricky chimes in. He goes, oh, it's this suspension bridge above a river with a super sick waterfall. It actually, I think, is a real bridge. I don't think that's the name. I'm not sure, but I know that there is a suspension bridge that has an amazing view that's up in that area. Because I think early on, Mel was on that, and we talked about it before.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, where I was not going to be doing that.
No, I would in a heartbeat. Can't wait.
Nope.
Hope I get
No.
to go. Can't wait to see it. That's
As I
okay.
said,
I'll take
if we go
pictures for you.
together, I'll wait for you somewhere else.
That's fine. I'll go. I'll take pictures and I'll show you. No problem. I got you. I got you. So she's like, wow, it sounds awesome. And Ricky's like, you should take Lizzie. And he's like, oh, yeah, whenever you're free. He goes, well, Ricky's like, well, why don't you go now? And Ricky's like, I'll cover your shift, And she's like, you don't have to do that. And he's like, actually, you'd be doing me a favor because I could use the cash. And she's like, are you up for company? And he's like, absolutely. So Ricky's being a really nice guy at this point. I mean,
Ricky's always nice.
I know, but I mean, it's like, even Hannah was like, go get your girl. And he's like, I kind of already lost her. It's not worth it. Like he's leaving. He's going in the Marines. So I think for him, it feels pointless to pursue Lizzie if he's leaving anyway. And Denny is a nice guy and he's interested in spending time with her. And, then she's not alone because there's not a lot of people their own age. They're the only 3.
Yep.
So Denny's like, nice to meet you. And they're like, yeah, you too. And off they go. Preacher walks up and he's like, I thought you were going to the movies today. He goes, yeah, I can go tomorrow. And he goes, that's a really nice thing you did for Lizzie. And he's just like, yeah, as he watches them walk out together. Like, geez. So now we're at
Hope
and Doc's house. And it looks like Hope is doing a little reorganizing. She's got everything out of the cabinets, stuff's on the counter, stuff's on the island. She's on a step ladder into the cabinets, and Doc walks into this menagerie. And she's like, who is the idiot that put the coffee next to the cleaning supplies? And he's like, well, the only thing I'll say is it wasn't me. Remember when Charmaine was staying there and Mel was sort of taking care of her for a bit and was looking for a spoon? And she's in the kitchen searching and pissed and can't find a spoon. And Doc walks in and he goes, oh, they're in the bottom drawer. It's like, who would put the silverware in the bottom drawer? He goes, this is Hope's system. I just live here. So even Hope doesn't understand her own system.
Well, you remember this? She's still trying to remember things.
Yeah, she doesn't remember this. And honestly, maybe it's better that way because she'll fix it to like something normal. Because he's like, I'm not even getting into it with you. I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to take ownership. I'm not going to tell you it's you, that you wanted it this way. Like, he's just like, I'm just going to say it wasn't me. And
considering it's her house. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. It's all her.
And he's like, he grabs her arm carefully to like help her get down off the stool. He goes, until you're steady on your feet, you probably should not be up on a step stool. And she's like, for Pete's sake, how am I supposed to reach the cupboard? And he's like, ask for help. And he goes, and what are you looking for? She goes, a picnic basket. You said we were going to the botanical gardens, remember? And she's like, I can't go. I have to reorganize the whole kitchen. It's a mess. And he's like, Hope, no. We both said we wanted to spend time together. It's fine. Don't worry about it. He goes, well, how long will it take to get there? Because remember, since the accident, she's kind of afraid to be in a car. So unless places are like she can walk there or it's a really short distance, which pretty much everything in Virgin River is pretty close, she's fine. But anything further, like if she wanted to go to Grace Valley or this botanical garden or anywhere else, she probably wouldn't go because she's still afraid because of the car accident. And he's like, well, it's about 30 minutes away. And she's like, yeah, I don't think I'm up to it. And he's like, leaving the house or being in a car? And she's like, both. He goes, well, when you drove with Joellen, does it bother you? She goes, she never stops talking. He goes, honey, be honest with me. If being in a car triggers you, then we should talk to your doctor. And she's like, Vernon, the last thing I need is you psychoanalyzing me. Like, she's so done with doctors. He goes, I'm not analyzing. I'm just concerned about you. He goes, you survived a horrible accident. She's like, and I want to move past it. And he's like, of course, but your body isn't done healing yet. It's like your mind may be ready, but your body is taking its time. She goes, well, my body needs to hurry up and you need to quit hovering. Because he is a hoverer. He's totally a hoverer.
Well, when it comes to her anyway,
yeah.
He is.
So he's just trying to like help her and she's getting upset. He goes, look, I understand. She's like, thank you. He tries to give her some space and he's just looking around at this kitchen, which is a mess. And she's like, look, I'll make you a deal. We'll go to the botanical gardens if you agree not to bring up anything about my health or the accident. And he's like, okay. She's like, is that a yes? He's like, affirmative. She goes, I will get my sun hat. It's like, in a way, he kind of misses the old Hope because this Hope is a little bit of a loose cannon.
Yeah.
So now remember Brady and Bree took a drive. Right. Remember they were cooped up. They needed to get out.
Well, he needed a moment.
Yeah.
Because you remember, she just told him she got threatened by his ex-boy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. They needed a little space.
He needed to calm down because he was going to be looking for somebody.
Well, and she has a plan. So, they need to go someplace where nobody's talking to them, nobody's around them. They can have this conversation. So they take his bike, they put a blanket out, looks like they brought some snacks or whatever. She's got a notebook and a pen, and she's basically interviewing him in a way to find out all about Calvin and the business and Emerald Lumber to figure out what's going on. Because in order to formulate a plan, she needs all of the information because she's looking at it through legal eyes. He just wants to throttle the guy. But she's looking at it like, how can we get him in a way that he can't escape from it? Like, if Brady just beats him up, that's not going to do anything. He's just going to retaliate.
Feel good. Yeah,
it's short term, though. It's short term. Right? I mean, yeah, it's going to make him feel great, but it's short term. So she starts asking him a lot of questions. She goes, so do you know who's on Calvin's payroll? And he's like, no, I've only just dealt with him. She goes, okay, what about Jeb? Now, remember Jeb. Jeb is the tall guy. He's like a ginger. Right. He's got the beard. Right. And he, his wife and daughter, remember they were poisoned and Mel and Doc took care of them. So he's like, okay, yeah, I know Jeb. And he's like, Jeb's a good guy. And if he was on the payroll, he's smart enough to keep his mouth shut. And she's like, okay. And she's like, taking notes, trying to ask questions. Guys, I hate the idea of you being stuck in the middle of this whole mess. And she's like, I'm not going to sit around with a law degree and watch you go to prison. Like, seriously, it's just for something that you didn't do. And you're not going to run away. So the two of them are now both sitting on the blanket. And he's just sitting there smiling, looking at her. And she's like, what? And he's like, nothing. She's like, no, tell me. And he just has this, smirk on his face. He goes, I've never been with someone like you. And she's like, well, like a control freak? And he's like, no. And he's like a woman who does not back down as he moves closer to her. He goes, no matter the odds. He goes, it's sexy. And she's just looking at him like, uh-huh. And he goes, well, you're pretty sexy yourself.
They're such a cute couple, but they're so lethal for each other.
Oh, my God. Their chemistry is great, but they're so bad for each other. I know. God. So he takes the notebook out of her hand, and she takes it back. And then he has to, get really close, and he's, whispers things in her ear. And he's like, you make me so crazy. And she goes, you know what drives me crazy? And he shakes his head no. And then she kisses him. And there you go. They drive each other crazy. That's the funny thing.
Do.
Yep.
It's a lethal combination.
I know. So we're back at the clinic, and Mel is there. Cameron's sort of in the background, sort of just, I don't know. I feel like he's lurking a little bit. I mean, he maybe not, but he kind of gives a lurk vibe.
You don't like this guy, period.
I do. The sad thing is, I do like him. I just think that he's kind of like, she's not into you, dude. Move on. He keeps trying with Mel, and he's either, and she is oblivious to it, for one. I mean, yeah, Jack clued her in. He kind of likes you. And she's like, what? I don't know what you're talking about. But she just doesn't care, which makes him try even harder, which is so sad. But, I mean, I feel bad for him because, he's probably a really nice guy. It's just he's kind of like, move on, dude. Go find somebody else. Granted, there's not a lot of people to choose from. Tara's there. So they're at the clinic, and Tara brings in baby Chloe for a checkup. And Mel's taking care of them and checking the baby out. And like I said, Cameron's sort of standing in the background looking in a file. I bet he's not even reading anything. He's just standing there just to be close. I don't know. I just feel like he doesn't need to. He could be in the kitchen making a cup of coffee, but he's not. He's standing 10 feet away, keeping an eye on things. Whatever. So Tara kind of whispers to Mel. She goes, Muriel wasn't kidding. The new doc's kind of cute. as he walks away. Now he's walked away, and she's like, oh my gosh. She goes, well, he's a very good doctor. That part never came up. It's like, no one cares.
No, but the point is, you're talking about Muriel. She doesn't care about his medical credentials.
No, but he's cute. That's really all that's important. And she's like, yeah, of course that didn't come up. She goes, okay, Miss Chloe is in the 70th percentile, and there's Cameron's back again, puttering around on the desk. She goes, that's excellent. And then Tara's like, I've been giving her the formula that you mentioned, and she loves it. And she's like, good. She's doing really good. Let's keep her on that, along with solids, and have her back here, for another checkup. And then Tara goes to stand up, and she gets dizzy. And she almost has to catch herself. And she's like, are you okay? And she yells to Fortunately, Cameron was in the wings. Good job, Cameron, for being so close. And she yells, Cameron. And she's like, can you come take the baby? And he's like, yeah. So he grabs the baby. Mel runs around and looks at Tara. And she's like, are you okay? And she's like, let me check your pulse. And so she's checking her out. And she's like, I don't know what happened. Now, remember, she had epilepsy, and she did pass out and have a seizure not that long ago.
Yeah.
But that was a minute ago. So that was a bit.
Yeah.
But it's... And you kind of have to watch that.
And she's the sole responsibility of the baby now because, her mother's gone.
I know. So, and I wonder, I thought people with epilepsy weren't allowed to drive, but maybe that's not the case.
I think it's depending on the degree of the epilepsy.
Maybe that's it. Yeah.
But, because every case is different.
Yeah, I think if it's severe, you are actually not allowed to drive because you could obviously have a seizure while you're driving. And that's, not cool. So we're back at Jack's bar, and Jack is outside pulling off some old. I know he's pulling off some loose boards.
The way
and
you feel about Cameron is the way I feel about Charmaine.
And
okay?
look who's walking up. Look!
I know.
I know. I'm there with you, 100%.
Because
Charmaine. Now, mind you, she's much more pregnant now. She's married. Not sure how happy of a marriage that is because of this whole thing with him making decisions without really consulting her.
Mm-hmm.
So Jack is outside of the bar, and he's now pulling off some old boards that are loose, and he's got to fix them. I mean, he's a lot of boards. I mean, this quick paint touch-up job has turned into a full-fledged outdoor remodel.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God.
That's exactly what it's turned into.
So
parents need to keep their bloody mouths shut.
I know.
And nice business and move on.
Yeah. So Charmaine walks up and she's like, hey, Jack. And he's like, what's up? Now she's very pregnant now. She goes, that preschool in Eureka, Harquette? And he's like, yeah. And she's like, they need a deposit so the twins can stay on the wait list. He's like, well, I haven't had the time to take a tour yet. And she's like, well, it is the best school in the area. I mean, and we can cover the cost. And Jack is like, yeah, it's not about the cost. I'm not even sure I want them to go there. And she's like, why not? And he's like, well, because it looks pretentious. And she's like, well, what makes you think that? He goes, for one, there's a picture of a toddler playing golf on the cover of the brochure.
Yeah, that's a bit bougie.
Right? And he just gives her that look, like, really? And she's like, you're being a little judgmental. And she's like, they also have a science lab and an amazing library. And he's like, look, I told Todd when he called that I'd take a look. And she goes, Jack, but by then we'll be so far down on the list, the boys will never get in. And that makes him spin his head around faster than anything because he did not know that she was having boys. And he's like, what? And as soon as she said it, the look on her face is like, shit, I probably should have told him it a different way at a different time. Like, and he's like, did you say boys? And she's like, he goes, we're having boys? She's like, yeah, we are. And he's like, wait, how long have you known that? And she's like, I found out last week. Like, seriously? Like, you want him to be a part of this, or maybe you don't? I mean, it's like she's playing both sides of the fence.
Oh, not like
totally.
She's playing sides of the fence.
And Todd is trying his best to push him out.
Oh, yeah. And the fact that, what's her name? The one who owns the
Joellen. Joellen
already knows before he does.
Oh, that's going to come out. Hold on now. He goes, wait, and you didn't tell me? Because she found out a week ago. He goes, well, Todd wanted to keep it quiet. What? Like, I would, seriously. Like, it's not Todd's kids. It's not Todd's choice. Why does Todd even get a say? She's like, the only people that know are me and him. She goes, and a deep breath. She goes, and Joellen. He's like, Joellen. He goes, well, I didn't tell her on purpose. It just slipped out. And he's like, if it wasn't on purpose, then I guess it doesn't count. She's like, Jack, I'm sorry. But now she gets, this is where I disagree. She gets pissy with him. It's like, you don't have a right to get mad. This is his child too. He should be in every step of the way for these kids. And she just keeps pushing him away. And she's like, well, we thought, meaning her and Todd, that it would be fun if the gender reveal was a surprise, which is fine for everybody else, but not the father, the biological father. Like, you're really going to keep that from him? And she's like totally serious about this. Like,
oh, yeah. Because the thing about it is, it's okay for her to demand things from him, but not the other way around.
Exactly. And he's like, what else are you not telling me? And she's like, nothing. He goes, I don't know why you're getting so upset. He goes, if this situation were reversed, you'd be totally cool. She's like, Todd's my husband and we're a team. And he's just like, he's pissed, but he has to remember she's holding all the cards. So he has to contain himself, but he still needs to let her know that this is so wrong. She's like, you may not like it, but you're the one that didn't want to get married, which is totally beside the point.
What does that have to do with the price of eggs?
Right.
I mean, you just because you want to get married doesn't mean he wanted to get. And the thing about it
has nothing to do with getting married. It's not about them. It's about the babies.
Exactly. And she knew how Jack felt about her.
I know.
You made the choice to want to keep these babies because you felt that this was your last chance. Okay. He decided to support you in this decision. And now you've married an asshole. Excuse my French. And now you're going
to cut him out?
Exactly. I'm like,
I mean,
no.
she is holding to what she said when she found out that they slept together, that him and Mel slept together. She said, at some point I am going to get married and it's going to be between me and my husband, and you're just going to have to deal with it. She did warn him.
This is why we have custody lawyers.
I know, right? So he is pissed, and he's just, the look on his face is like, I can't even believe that you would do this. And he's like, this conversation is over. And she's like, Jack, I apologize. I don't know what else you want me to say. Really? Really, Charmaine? Really? And he's like, I don't want you to say anything, Charmaine. I want you to start acting like I'm the twins' father. And she's kind of like, whatever. And she just turns around and walks away.
Because she knows she's wrong.
Yeah,
she knows she's wrong. Yeah, you want to be wrong and strong at the same time. This is not going to be, because I don't blame Jack for not being angry, because he has a right to be angry.
Absolute right to be angry. She has no right to hide this from him, to make all the decisions. It's fine if she wants to do what she wants with her life, but when it has to do with the kids, no, she doesn't get to do that. And yeah, it's probably going to take a lawyer to make sure that he gets a say, because that's the way she's acting and the way Todd is acting. That's going to be the only way.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he doesn't have the money for it, but at least, Mel's supporting him, and now he's got another kid on the way. It's like, oh my God, man went from 0 kids to 3 in like a matter of months. Oh my gosh. So now we're back at the clinic, and Mel's checking out Tara, and she's like, okay, your blood pressure is good, and they're checking her eyes, and Cameron's there. They got the baby in the stroller. She's fine. He goes, have you been taking your seizure medicine? She's like, yeah. And she goes, and what about your sleep? And she goes, well, it's not great. She goes, but I don't want to take anything in case Chloe wakes up in the middle of the night. And Mel's like, okay. So they're trying to think of what they can do. She goes, Tara, how are you coping with everything? And she's like, I'm fine during the day. She goes, but at night, it's awful. And she's like, I can't stop thinking about her. I just miss her so much. And Mel's just being sympathetic. She's like, I know you do, honey. I'm sorry. And Cameron's like, sometimes lack of sleep plus stress can override your medication. So she goes to stand up again, and she gets dizzy. And they're like, hey, there's a bed upstairs. I would love it if you could lay down. And she shakes her head no. She goes, I can't. I have Chloe. And Mel's like, we can watch her. She goes, no, this is silly. I can sleep at home. Mel's like, I know, but I think you're too tired to drive. And she goes, are you sure you're okay to watch her? And Cameron's like, we're fine. In fact, I think maybe we'll go have a little snack. And Chloe's just smiling, having a good time. She could care less. And he's like, what do you think,
She's
Chloe? She goes, see,
such
Chloe agrees with me.
adorable.
Cute baby.
She's such a beautiful, cute baby.
Such a cute baby. See, so he's like, we're going to be fine. So she's like, all right. So Mel takes Tara and they go upstairs and so she can have a nap. And I guess they're on Munchkin Patrol. Goodness. So now we are with Doc and Hope and we're taking a stroll through the botanical gardens. He's like, well, in front of the magnolia tree is where we first kissed. And she's like, no, our first kiss was in the Elizabethan hedge maze. And he's like, are you sure? She's like, I'm positive. You dropped your glasses along the way. We had to go all the way back through the maze to find them. He's like, and when we did, we kissed. They're very cute. Yeah, you're right. You're right. She goes, I can't remember what I did yesterday, but 20 years ago, clear as day, which generally happens with this kind of amnesia. He goes, look, your short-term memory will improve.
That happens in my day, and I don't have her injuries.
Right? I know. Me too. It's like, why did I walk in this room? I don't even remember. God.
It's a daily thing.
I know. He's like, your short-term memory will improve. You just got to give it some time. And she's like, no doctor talk, remember? He goes, hey, you brought it up. And she goes, I know. Our first kiss seemed eons ago, but feels like it was yesterday. He goes, until I look in the mirror. He goes, I still see the same beautiful woman I fell in love with 20 years ago. He goes, well, I'm concerned. He goes, is your macular thing okay? He goes, no. My vision is doing very well, thank you. Apparently, it's the day of picnics because they have a blanket. I think they stole Bree and Brady's blanket and they laid it down on the grass. And he goes, and the treatment appears to be working, so his eyes are doing okay, which is nice. She goes, are you buttering me up for something? He's like, no, but I do want to ask you something about Denny. He goes, I think maybe he should stay with us. Right now, he's at the B&B, and we've got the extra room, and he came all this way to visit with me. But she's like, I haven't met him yet. He goes, well, I can invite him over. Tonight, I'll be wiped out. And he's like, okay, how about tomorrow? And she's like, Vernon, I'm just not ready to have a stranger in the house. And he goes, Hope, he's not a stranger. He's my grandson. She goes, yeah, and you've known him for what, a week? He goes, yeah, but if he stayed with us, I get to spend a whole lot more time with him. And she's like, but the house isn't ready, and I have to vacuum and change the sheets. And he goes, Denny isn't going to care about any of that. He's like, is there maybe another reason why you don't want him to stay with us? He goes, no, then just be honest. And she's like, no, I don't want to tell you. And he's like, well, yeah, because you'll just want to fix it. He's like, all right, I promise I won't get involved. She's like, I'm angry. I'm angry about losing Lily. I'm angry about my accident and not being able to remember why I walked into a room. He's like, what do you need? She's like, I feel lost. She goes, and the only way I can find myself is to be alone. So he's like, does that include me? She's like, no. Like alone meaning not other people. She goes, I'm asking you to keep everyone else away from me. And he's just looking very concerned. Like isolation does not seem to be the thing that you should do, but that's what she's asking for. And I'm guessing he'll go with that for a period of time to see if it actually does help. But at a certain point, he's going to be like, yeah, that's not working anymore, or it's not working enough, or it's not working to the way that you think it is. And he'll make her try something else. But I think he'll give her the flexibility to give it a try. I could see that. So we have some beautiful scenery. It's like the drone is flying over Virgin River. So Cameron and Mel are feeding Chloe. And he's like, oh, good girl. And he's like, oh, she really likes you. He goes, and Mel's like, I really love her. And he goes, what's not to love? Tiny fingers, cute little toes. And he goes, have you spent a lot of time around babies? And he's like, not really. I mean, I have a nephew, but I wasn't around him that much. And she goes, why? Because of work? He goes, no, it's more to do with like being a bachelor. She's like, oh, really? He goes, yeah, I was going out every night, dating different women and just doing whatever I wanted. She goes, well, that sounds like being single. He's like, yeah. After a while, I started wanting something more meaningful. And she looks at him like, oh. And she goes, when you're young, it's easy. You get caught up in wanting your freedom, and then there's a price to pay for that. And she's like, oh, I totally get that. She's like, so what's meaningful for you? He goes, oh, a wife, 3-4 kids. She's like, wow, a big house in the country, 4 kids. He's like, yeah, he's like, Virgin River seems like a really great place to raise a family. And she's like, yeah. And he goes, how about you? And she goes, he goes, do you see yourself staying here? And she kind of thinks about it, and she's like, I think this place has a way of growing on you. And he's like, yeah, it's beautiful, that's for sure. And she's like, for me, it's more the people. I know it sounds weird, but I feel like I've known some of them a lot longer than I have. He goes, isn't that what everybody wants? To feel like you belong someplace? He goes, look, Chloe's mocking me for being too cheesy. She goes, oh, she would never do such a thing. So Mel's watch chimes. And she's like, actually, I have to go make a couple phone calls. And he goes, are you cool? She's like, yep. Him and Chloe will be just fine. So she's like, all right, I'll be back in a bit.
He's got a new woman to fawn over.
Right? Goodness. So Mel is looking for her phone. She finds it, and then Bree walks into the clinic. And she's like, oh, hey. And she's like, I didn't know you were coming. She goes, well, Brady needs some bandages, and the pharmacy is out of stock. I was wondering if you had any. She goes, yeah, I'm sure we do. Let's go check. So Mel goes and grabs some bandages. And she's like, this should hold him over. And she goes, and she also gives him some medical tape. She goes, hey, I heard about your new job. How's it going? She goes, well, so far so good. She's like, nice. She goes, I'm really glad you decided to stay. She's like, I didn't feel like going back to Sacramento, probably to stay away from their parents. She goes, and Jack didn't like the idea either. So she goes, wait, did you end up? And Mel asked Bree if she ended up telling Jack about what happened with her ex. And Bree's like, no. And she goes, all that stuff that happened with Dawn is in the past. And she's like, right. She goes, I mean, it wasn't just stuff, though, Bree. She's like, oh, I know that. I'm aware. Because Mel's worried that she pushes it down, it's going to come back up in a way that she's not ready for. So it's like, you got to deal with it.
Yeah.
Which is tough. She goes, and I'm over it. You know, I don't want Jack to know. She goes, oh, no,
Sheridan.
no.
Yeah, Sheridans are not good about letting people in.
Oh, my God, no. I mean, it takes a long time. Once they open the floodgates, they're fine. But to get to that point is really hard. And Mel's like, no, I haven't said anything, and I won't. She goes, I just thought maybe he was the reason that you didn't want to go back. She goes, well, even if I think about it, I can't function. So Sacramento's not going to be the place for her. And then, of course, Mel asks again. She goes, did you ever happen to get in touch with that therapist? And Bree's like, no, I just want to forget about it. And Mel's like, yeah, I get it. She goes, if you change your mind or you want somebody to talk to, I'm here. So she goes, and if you don't, that's okay. No pressure. And she goes, also, we could just hang out. She's like, okay, great, thanks. She goes, well, I should get going because, thanks for the bandages. And I'm like, see you later. So, I mean, she's trying to be there for her because she's clearly struggling. Even if she's trying not to think about it, it's gonna come back and bite her. It always does. Stuff like that you don't deal with will always come back and bite you in the butt when you least expect it.
Call your history biting you in the ass.
Mm-hmm. So we're back at the bar, and Preacher is behind the bar taking care of some customers, and look who walks in. It's Julia. She's like, I thought I would come and try some of this famous artichoke dip that you speak of. And he's like, oh, I'm glad you came by. Can I get you a drink? And she's like, I'd love a bourbon and Coke, but it's a little early. He goes, well, if you're looking for judgment, you have to come to the wrong place. He goes, so bourbon, huh? And she's like, yeah, because my family's from Kentucky. He goes, oh, the bluegrass state. She's like, yes. He goes, well, if you're looking for a taste from home without a kick, he goes, how about this? Sarsaparilla.
Oh, man.
She's like, oh, my God. Haven't had that since I was a kid. Isn't sarsaparilla like the original root beer?
Mm-hmm. It is.
Yeah.
And the only places I've seen that they serve it, actually, is in the South.
Yeah. It's a very southern
It's a very southern thing because when I visited New Orleans, I remember drinking it there, and I thought it was amazing.
Oh, yeah.
It was really good stuff.
Yeah.
But you can't get that here. I mean, unless you have a specialty store or something.
Right. And she's like, ooh, that looks good. And he's like, coming right up. So he opens up the bottle and he's pouring her a glass. She's like, thank you. And he's waiting for her to taste it. And she's like, oh my gosh, this takes me back. And he goes, well, see anything else that jumps out at you? And hands her a menu. She's like, thanks. He's like, you bet. And he's just trying to charm her a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes in the kitchen. Jack's doing something at the sink. And he's like, hey. And he's like, hey. And he goes, how's the painting going? And Jack's like, oh, I had to strip a bunch of wood rod. And he goes, why don't you quit for the day and hit it tomorrow? He goes, I can't. It's supposed to rain. He goes, oh, come on, man. You've been at it since dawn. He goes, yeah, I'm going to keep going till I finish. And he goes, well, not a hill I'm going to die on. He goes, I'm glad we're in an agreement. So Preacher looks like he's making something up, and he's like, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Making some artichoke dip." And he goes, "I don't recall seeing that on the menu." And he goes, "Well, my Aikido teacher, Julia, said she wanted to try some." And Jack looks at him and he goes, "Oh. Any chance Julia's the stunning woman sitting at the bar?" He goes, "Yeah, that'd be her." I mean, Preacher hasn't had a lot of women in his life. It's Paige. That's it. He goes, "I think she might be interested in a little more than your dip." Preacher just laughs. He goes, "No, man, I don't think so." He goes, "Really? You gonna ask her out?" He goes, "Well, I wasn't planning on it." He goes, "Why not?" And he's like, "Well, it's not the right time." And Preacher's like, "Finding Christopher is all I care about right now." And Jack's like, "Yeah, I get that." He goes, "I've even hired a second private detective." He goes, "You're doing everything you can." So gives him like a pat on the back. He's like, "Hang in there, bud." Goodness. So we're back at the clinic, and Tara's coming from upstairs. She must have had a nice nap. And Mel's like, "Hey." She goes, "How long was I out?" And Mel's like, "Only a couple hours." She goes, "Yeah, I don't know what's wrong with me." She goes, "I thought I'd be doing better by now, but I'm not." She goes, "Ugh, grieving is different for everyone. It's a process, you can't rush it. You just have to work through it." She goes, "In the meantime, if you're okay with it," she goes, "Connie's offered to spend the night so that you can get some sleep." She goes, "And the sewing circle ladies will, be on standby, and they're going to reinstate the meal train, and people are going to help." And she's like, "I just want to help you." And she goes, "I can't thank you enough." She goes, "Please, you thanked me already." And she gives her a big hug. Doc gets there, and he's like, "Hey, Tara, how you doing?" And she goes, "A little better." She goes, "Chloe's in the kitchen with Cameron if you want to see her." And Tara goes in the kitchen, and Doc and Mel are there together. And she's like, "Is she all right?" And she goes, "Yeah, she's just not getting enough sleep." He goes, "I'm thinking of giving her some D3 drops," which is basically extra vitamin D. And Connie's going to spend the night tonight. And he goes, "Yep, that sounds like a good plan." And so Mel's like, "So how was your picnic?" And he's like, "Well, it was good until it wasn't." Typical. He goes, "What happened?" He's like, "Hope's concussive symptoms don't seem to be improving." He's like, "Just remember, it's not uncommon, especially for the first few months." He's like, "Yeah, but I'm worried the longer it goes on, the more likely it'll be permanent." She's like, "Is it something specific, or is it a combination of symptoms?" He goes, "It's a kind of a combination. Loss of impulse control, increased reactivity, mood swings, and then you add fatigue and memory loss. It just adds fuel to the fire." She's like, "So it's cyclical?" And he's like, "Yeah." He goes, "I feel like I'm living with a stranger." He goes, "Doc, please don't be so hard on yourself. TBIs put a huge strain on relationships." He goes, "But the thing is, before the accident, I pretty much knew what Hope was thinking and feeling. And now I have no idea what's going on inside that head of hers." And she's like, "I don't think she does either. That's the problem. She's a loose cannon right now. I mean, she doesn't even know what she's doing because she's not acting like herself. She was you could always tell, oh, that's going to rile her up, or but now she just reacts to everything so differently now." He's like, "She's struggling and she doesn't want me to help her." She goes, "It's just so frustrating. I don't know what to do." And she goes, "Well, hopefully it's temporary." He goes, "And what if this is the new normal?" So now we are in the wilderness, and Denny is taking Lizzie on a hike. Remember, they were headed out somewhere with his squirrel food. Yes, yeah. With the squirrel food.
Yes.
And they're just walking, and this is not something she does on a regular basis. It's clear. He's like, "Watch your step. It's kind of tricky here." I mean, she looks like she's a little tired.
You know what this reminds me of? Mel's sister-in-law.
Yep. Yeah, she was done before she started. She liked controlled air environments for her workouts, and there's so much outside here. It's like, yes, because you're in the wilderness, you fool. So Lizzie is panting and using the tree to hold herself up, and he turns around. Denny's like, "Shoot, are you okay?" And she's like, "You didn't tell me it was straight uphill." So he stops, and he has some water. He gives her some water. He's like, "Here you go." She's like, "Thanks."
These bougie gym people, they don't do wilderness.
Guarantee she doesn't even go to the gym. Right? She's too busy eating candy or something. And he's like, "So hiking is not your thing, huh?" And she goes, "How do you know?" He's like, "Your shoes." "Well, they used to be white. Now I don't know. And soon they'll be in the trash." Goodness. So she's just looking around, and he's looking at her, and she's like, what? And he's like, nothing. She goes, do I have dirt on my face? He's like, no. He goes, if you're lying, I'll find out. And she's like, I'm joking. Like, they're just playing. He goes, I do hate it when people let you walk around with spinach in your teeth or toilet paper stuck to your shoe and never say anything. He goes, I think people do that because they don't want to embarrass anyone. He goes, it's more embarrassing not to know. And he's like, well, hypothetically, if they don't bring attention to whatever it is, then maybe no one will notice or it'll fix itself. And she's like, that's a lot of ifs. And he's like, it takes a lot of guts to tell someone something when they don't want to hear it. She goes, actually, me and Ricky, we used to date, and that's why we broke up. He goes, oh, I figured there was something up with you guys. She's like, why? He goes, well, the way he looks out for you. And she's like, yeah, we were pretty serious. I ended things because he joined the Marines without telling me, because he thought I'd get upset. He goes, well, would you have? He goes, maybe, but I would have eventually supported his decision. He was scared to disappoint you? And he's like, yeah, I ended up not trusting him. I think that's worse. He's like, yeah, I guess so. He's like, anyway, we should pick up the pace. We don't want to hike back in the dark. It's like, oh, she's like, deep breath, like, oh, good Lord. I thought we would be done soon. The look on her face is like, I'm so done.
And it's the reason why I don't hike.
Yep, exactly. So it looks like we're back at Jack's bar, and Jack is cleaning up after his painting. I don't know that he finished, but it looks like he did a pretty good job. But he's cleaning everything up, and Mel just shows up, and she's like, wow, this looks great. He's like, thanks, I just finished here, and now I'm going to head to the back. She goes, it's almost 2. We need to leave soon. He goes, I'm sorry, this turned out to be a bigger job than I thought. And he goes, and I had to deal with Charmaine. She's like, oh my God, what happened? He goes, turns out we're having twin boys. And Mel's like, aw. And she's like, wait, what's wrong? And he's like, she knew for a week and didn't tell me. She's like, wow. He's like, yeah. He goes, I know I couldn't trust Todd, but I thought Charmaine would be straight with me. It's like, I don't know why he thought that. I didn't think that. She's
exactly.
Like, and Mel's like, is there anything I can do? He's like, no, thanks. She's like, it is what it is. He's like, I'm sorry. He's like, I just know you wanted to get your car taken care of. And, because I think now it's too late for them to go. And she's like, it's fine. I'll figure it out. And he's like, are you sure? She goes, yeah, it's fine. It's so cute the way she grabs his cheeks and gives him a kiss. It's adorable. So we're back inside the bar. And Preacher is cleaning up dishes from his artichoke dip that he made for Julia. And he's like, so? And she's like, oh, everything was delicious. She's like, oh, no, because she got her wallet out to pay. And he's like, no, you don't. This one is on the house. And she's like, I can't accept that. He goes, oh, I insist. And she's like, you're not going to win this game. He's like, okay. He goes, well, what about you take me up on a private Aikido lesson? It's like, okay, so now we're bartering? Okay, I feed you and you give me free lessons. Great. Nice. She's like, a trade. And he goes, yeah, that could work. And he's like, I know that you're busy, so whenever you have an open spot, you just let me know. And she's like, I will make the time. Trust me. As she kind of glances and walks away. And he kind of, nice little smile. So Mel walks in and she's like, hey, Preach. She goes, wait, I thought you and Jack were supposed to be headed over the boat launch. She goes, yeah, well, he's still painting and he doesn't want to stop. He goes, yeah, his dad made a crack about the paint. She's like, that's right. He goes, anyway, can you text Ruben and let him know that we can't come? And he goes, yeah, you bet. And then Ricky comes in and he's got this giant fresh seafood. Looks like that it came from the air freight, perishable, like somebody flew it in from wherever. And he goes, where do you want me to put this ahi? And he goes, freezer, fridge. And he's like, refrigerator, thanks. And he's like, cool. And Preacher's like, actually, I may have a way to get you guys over to the island. And Mel's like, really? Now, again, beautiful scenery shot, waterfall. It's like the view is like from above the treetops and you're looking down on the waterfall. Beautiful, stunning. And here is the bridge that Denny was talking about, where it's the extension bridge and Denny's walking across it with Lizzie and a beautiful song playing in the back.
And the thing is, it's a lovely bridge.
I know. If you don't like heights, it's not lovely.
And that's the problem.
I get it.
I'm not a big fan of heights. This is why I don't do roller coasters.
That's fine. That's fine.
So
I will take pictures for you so that you can experience it from afar. Live vicariously through me for this one.
Okay. Sounds good.
So Lizzie, they stop to look at the waterfall and she's like, oh my God, it's beautiful. And they're kind of like checking out both. So he goes, hey, thanks for taking me up here. He goes, I'm glad Ricky offered to cover your shift. She's like, actually, we're supposed to do this scene from Romeo and Juliet for the Renaissance Fair, and now we're not. And he's like, too awkward? She's like, yeah. She goes, so I don't have a partner. He goes, that sucks. She goes, this might sound crazy, but would you be up for it? And he's like, perform it with you? And she's like, I don't know. I think we'd have fun. And she kind of looks at him and he's like, it's not really my thing. She looks disappointed, but she's like, He's like, sorry. And she just kind of shakes her head like, oh, well, at least I asked. She looks a little disappointed, though.
No, she is disappointed.
Yeah. It's like she wants him to be a certain way and maybe he's just not. So he starts walking off the bridge and she literally, as the scenery shot, the drone pulls back. She's standing in the middle of the bridge by herself as he's almost walked out of frame, off the bridge. So see, she just feels lonely. It's just sort of like a visual of her feeling lonely.
Yeah.
Like she thought they were cool, but maybe they're not so cool. So Jack is now in the back of the bar and mixing more paint. It looks like he's power washed the back and there's all these blank spots that obviously need to be covered. And they're not going anywhere.
He's going to be there till there's no light left.
Till he finishes. When he is done, and not until. So out come the guys. They're like, hey, Jack. And he's like, hey, fellas. Like, what are you doing here? He's like, I brought some reinforcements. And he goes, for what? And he goes, well, to help you finish the job. He's like, I have Ricky covering the bar, or he'd be out here too. And Jack's looking at him like, come on, guys, you don't have to do that. And Charlie's like, oh, preacher said we did. And he goes, oh, he did he? And he goes, oh, come on now. That's not true. And the guys are like, you promised us free beer, right? It's Bert. And he's like, okay. Nick is like, ignore these old fools. We're happy to help. And he goes, what about your hand? Because remember, Nick has a thing on his wrist. And he's, as long as you don't ask me to vacuum, we're good to go. And he goes, okay. Because that was his whole thing. Remember, he had Mel write it on the notes, Joellen?
He did not want to vacuum. Well, it's a whole bed and breakfast. That's a lot of vacuuming.
It is. He goes, I appreciate it. He goes, why don't you guys get started over there? So Jack and Preach start talking. He goes, look, dude, I told you. I've got your back. He goes, and after this, I'll take you out for some wings. He goes, all right, but only if I can buy the beer. He's like, perfect. So with the 5 of them helping, it should get done a lot faster. So now we've got Doc, and he's in the back of Hope's house on that little patio that they have, and he's got all this paperwork out, and he's got his glass of red wine, and up comes Muriel. And he goes, well, hello there. She goes, I made you and Hope a strawberry cheesecake. She goes, oh, that was very kind.
Yes, that I could do with a strawberry cheesecake about now.
Right? And she's like, I thought of you too, that you could use a little treat. And he's like, oh, yeah. He goes, where's Hope? Is she around? He goes, oh, she's inside. She's just not up for company just yet. And she's like, oh, okay. He goes, well, if you're game, she brought her backgammon. He goes, absolutely. He goes, do you want some wine? She goes, I'd love some. Thank you. It's like, just because Hope doesn't want company doesn't mean Doc doesn't want company.
Exactly.
He goes, okay, well, that needs to go in the fridge. So he takes the cheesecake and he goes inside. And she sits down and she starts setting up the backgammon. And he's putting the cheesecake in the fridge. And Hope walks out. He's like, hey, how was your nap? He goes, good. I thought I heard voices. And he's like, oh, yeah, Muriel's right outside. And that's the side eye. Like, without saying it, what the hell is she doing? Like, you just, she doesn't say it. She made us a strawberry cheesecake. She goes, oh, well, isn't that thoughtful of her? And he's like, yeah. He goes, and we're going to play around a backgammon. Why don't you join us? And she's like, no, you go ahead. He's like, are you sure? He's like, yeah. Okay. He goes, we're going to be right outside if you change your mind. Now, it's not like he excluded her. It's not like he didn't invite her. Like, he's doing everything he can, but his life hasn't ended. She doesn't want to do anything. Doesn't mean he shouldn't, but it's going to make her jealous and uncomfortable. And
oh, yeah.
Goodness. So he grabs another glass, and he grabs the wine, and he takes it outside. And Muriel's like, we're good to go. And he's like, oh, you're just trying to take some of my money. Like, they're not playing for money, but she goes, let's just see what happens. So they're having a good time. I mean, they get along. They have a lot in common. And Hope is inside looking through the window, watching them in tears. Because it's like, as much as she wants to be a part of that, she just doesn't have it in her yet. She's just not there. Yeah. And it's like she doesn't want to watch him slip away. But in a way, she feels like that's what's happening. Yep. So they're just having a good time, playing backgammon. And she's just standing there watching them as she cries. It's very sad. More scenery shots. We're looking down the Virgin River, and we see Preacher driving Jack. Remember, they're going to go out for wings and a beer,
Mm-hmm.
and they pull up to a dock. And Jack is looking, and it's like, we see Mel standing there, and she's looking all cute, swaying herself back and forth. And Jack looks at Preacher like, what the hell? And he goes, okay, what's going on? And he's like, ask Mel. Smile at each other, and he smiles like, okay, you guys got me. And so she's just kind of standing there waiting. She gives a little wave to Preacher. They wave at each other. And she's like, hey. And she's like, I have something to show you. And he's like, well, does it involve wings? And she's like, actually, it does. And so he's got his eyes closed. She's guiding him. And he's like, how much farther are we going to go? She goes, just a few more steps. So she had to guide him like through the trees. He goes, what was that? She goes, it's just a tree. Calm down. He goes, step up, keep walking, keep going. Okay, now you can open your eyes. And he sees this little tiny red plane at the end. It's like one of those puddle jumpers.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, what the? And he goes, was this your idea? She's like, well, I did have a little help from Preacher. Now, this scene right here, this screenshot where he's facing the water and she's got her chin and her hands on his shoulder looking up at him, and he's kind of turned his head looking at her. They use that in a lot of promo stuff too. It's so funny how these are so easily picked out. It's like, oh, they use that a lot. It's a cute picture because there's so few moments that they've both been very happy, and this happens to be one of them. Unfortunately, it never lasts. Sad to say. It doesn't take long. She's like, come on, let's go. So they have she packed bags for them because remember, they're supposed to go for overnight. Yep. And Brad is Jack's buddy. And he's like, hey, Brad. He goes, oh, hey. And he's putting the luggage on there. And he goes, so you're in on this too, huh? And he was like, I'm just the ride. And Jack's like, you're sneaky. She goes, yep, that's right. He goes, you ready to go? Okie dokie. And then so they get them in the plane. He's like, after you. He goes, climbing in the plane. It's a very small plane. It's like 4 seats. You know, the pilot, co-pilot, if there was one, and then the 2 seats behind them. So he gets them locked in, shuts the door. They put their seatbelts on. And he's like, so are you gonna at least tell me where we're headed? As he puts his arm around her, she's like, nope. She goes, Brad, where are we headed? He goes, up. And he goes,
I love that.
I know, up. He goes, hey, why you gotta take her side? And he goes, 'cause she's paying. And they're all laughing. It's just really funny. So he grabs her face and gives her a kiss. It's really cute. So he starts the engine. Nice music in the background. Always, the music they pick is always very good. They either have the songs that are covers. Very seldomly is it the original because those are the most expensive. A lot of original artists. Maybe people you've never heard of. They do have some of the people that write songs for it. They've used multiple of the same band or group songs, so it's nice. The music is very appropriate. It's like you have to listen to the words of the songs. They fit so much with the storyline or the characters. It's really cool. So they're gonna take off, right? It's so cool how they can like be on the water and then take off like as if the water is the runway. It's just a cool thing. All right, so they took off into the wild blue yonder. And so now we are probably Grace Valley, I'm guessing. And that would be my guess. And we see Mike sitting outside of a little cafe with a cup of coffee. He's on his phone, just sitting at a little 2-person table. And Bree shows up and she's like, hey, thanks for meeting me. Like, she's a woman with a plan. And and now he had, last time he saw her, he was like, yeah, let's get together. I'm around. Like, he's got no game. So it was hard to know that he even liked her. Even Jack is like.
Yeah, but I think the thing is, I have a strange feeling what she's there for and what he's there for is
totally. He thinks you called me because maybe you want to get together, and she's a woman with a plan because he is not aware. Because after the whole raid at Brady's house, he's probably thinking, "Oh, she's done with that guy." No clue that they hooked up again.
Exactly.
So he's thinking, "Oh, she's maybe over him, and she's gonna call me, and we're gonna get together." And that's why his first reaction is, hi, glad you called me. And she's like, he's like, do you want something to drink? She's like, no, thanks. Like, for her, it's all business. She's like, actually, I wanted to talk to you about Calvin's connection to Emerald Lumber. And the look on his face is like, And then he's
This is
like, oh, I
mm-hmm.
didn't know this was work related. She's like, yeah. And she's like, well, I think Brady being the suspect is just a little too convenient. And he's like, okay. He goes, 1 minute you have 0 suspects. Then Brady's alibi completely falls apart. And then the warrant just falls in your lap. He's like, what are you saying? He's like, well, I know the Joint Task Force mandate was to arrest Calvin and flip him in order to find his boss, but no one knows who that is. And the only way to really take down the fentanyl pipeline is to take down the head of the organization. And he's like, okay, but what does any of that have to do with Brady? And she's like, well, the two are connected somehow. I just have to figure out how. And he's just looking at her like, am I really having this conversation with you right now? Like, this just went from, I thought maybe we were going to have a nice little connection here, to you are still all over that guy. Like, that's,
Yep.
yeah, not good. And he's like, why are you telling me all this? She goes, I'm the one who asked Jack to talk to you about helping with the case. And he's like, look, I'm going to tell you the same thing I told him, Bree. I can't help. And she's like, Mike, why not? He goes, look, local and federal law enforcement put thousands of hours into this case. She's like, yeah, so? He's like, and he gets up, like he's done. Like, if this is work and I can't help you, I'm done.
Yeah.
And he's like, so, it's their case to crack, not yours. And he puts money on the table, and he kind of looks pissed, and he walks away. And she's looking shocked, like, I'm here to help you, and what? So, now we're on the plane. Now, Mel is a little nervous. She's a little nervous. It's a very tiny plane, so this is a new experience for her. And Brad, he's a pilot. He's been flying for a long time. As they're flying, Mel's looking out the window, and Brad is sort of grabbing his left arm. That's not a good sign when your pilot, the only pilot, is grabbing his arm.
Exactly.
And Jack is looking out the window. It's starting to get a little cloudy. And he's like, oh, it looks like it might rain. And Brad's like, oh, don't worry. It'll be clear by morning. And Mel is looking at Jack. And she goes, what do you think? And he's like, looks at her. And he's like, no one's ever done anything like this for me. And she's like, well, you deserve to be spoiled once in a while. So they grab each other's faces and give each other kisses. And they're like, oh, thank you. And Brad in the front, he goes, hey, lovebirds, your captain is speaking. And he goes, we're about halfway there, as he continues to grab his arm. And he says to Jack, he goes, hey, Jack, you want to get up here and take the stick? And he's like, yeah. And Mel's like, what? She goes, no, you're kidding, right? And Jack's like, no, not kidding. Brad's giving me lessons. And she's looking very, very nervous. And Mel's like, I think it would be safer for Brad to be up there and for us to stay back here. Now, Brad continues to look. His face is wincing. He's shuffling in his seat. He doesn't look like everything is okay. And Mel is just like trying to talk him into like staying in the back seat with her. He goes, oh, but so half a dozen flight hours doesn't inspire your confidence? And Mel is like, not at 10,000 feet, no. And he's like, oh, ye of little faith. So they think it's funny. They're just chuckling along. Not a big deal. No, Brad, you're on your own. Like Jack's telling him, you're good. And now Brad from Mel can see him from the back. He's grabbing his shoulder. He's kind of wincing. And she's like, Brad, is your arm okay? And he's like, it's been bugging me all day. He goes, I must have strained it, something at the gym. And, it's called getting old, bud. That's what Jack says. And he's like, yeah, right, maybe. And he starts groaning, and then he goes over. Like, he's hunched over. And Mel's like, Brad. And he takes off the headphones that he's wearing. And Mel grabs him from the back. And she's like, okay, Brad, is your chest tight? And he's like, yeah. And he goes, like somebody's sitting on it? And he's like, yeah. And Mel looks back at Jack with a panicked look on her face. He goes, I think he's having a heart attack.
Yeah.
The end. Like, thank you, Virgin River, for another cliffhanger. Like, can they not have a nice day? Like, can they not have nice things? Why can they not have nice things?
No nice things for them. Nope, not gonna happen.
Why? Why
Because
is that?
that's the nature of being a good couple. A good couple does not have a nice day. A bad guy has a nice day, but not a good.
Seriously. They get a break for like a hot minute.
Yeah.
And then it all falls apart. I mean, seriously.
Welcome to storytelling.
Oh my God. I get we have to have drama, and I get we have to have intrigue, and we have to have action, but it's like, could we just give them a break for a minute, please?
No break. Sorry.
Like, can they just have some nice things once in a while? I mean, come on.
Good luck with that.
I know. So I guess we'll have to find out if they crash and burn. Clearly not. There's still more seasons, so. But how will this affect the future? We don't know. It's like, oh my gosh. Always a cliffhanger. Every episode has a cliffhanger, and the end of the season has a bigger one. So
That's what keeps bringing us back.
This is our cliffhanger for this episode. So serious as we say, heart attack. Mm-hmm. There you go. Now it makes sense. They didn't even have to say it because we already knew. Jeez, really? Now she's wishing that she could have gotten him finished so they could drive or take the boat. But then again, if they would have taken the boat would have capsized. It would have been something. Like, they just can't have a good day. There's always somebody messing it up, something happening. It's ridiculous. But anyway, well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for another fun-filled episode of Virgin River, Season 4.
Yes. Well, till next episode, folks. Au revoir.
Au revoir. Have a nice day, Gigi. Talk to you next time.
You too.
Bye-bye.